Latino Democratic Caucus for bringing this here to the city. As someone, of course, who I've lived here just about my entire life, this of course, I have a vested interest, as I'm sure that many of you in here also do, in who leads, of course, our congressional district. At this time, I'd like to recognize some elected officials. If I don't, for whatever reason, if I don't catch your name, please, like wink at me or raise your hand or throw a rock or something so I can get around to get to you. Of course, representing here North Las Vegas, she gave us a fantastic invocation, Senator Pat Spearman. Another one of my good friends from the Board of Regents, Mr. Sam Lieberman. Ooh, okay. I already went through the... I have Bill Hartman, the chair of the Lincoln County
Central Committee.
Central Committee. Thank you very much for coming all the way in. Thank you very much for coming all the way in. I really appreciate that. And then... Oh, okay. I'll do this then. No, I need better handwriting over here. I guess if I was a doctor, I'd be able to read this, or if I was a pharmacist, right? And of course, our candidate for judge, I forget which department?
Department 15.
Department 15, District Court, Bruce Gale. I saw another friend in the back there, Mr. Bert Lucas, he's running for Assembly District 4. And it says here John Morales, which I don't think I know who he is. Would you like to introduce yourself? John Morales? No? Got Pitt Spearman. Of course, we have all our people here. Sam Lieberman. I think that's it. Oh, wait a second. I thought I saw her a minute ago. Mayor Pro Tem. Is Mayor Pro Tem still here?
Over here.
Oh, there she is. I'm so sorry. I thought the last time I saw you, you were over here. Yes, she's with me on here. I've built up a nice relationship. And of course, from our city staff, Sandra Morgan. She's our city attorney. I want to thank our city staff that, although they're not here, of course, they worked with the Latino Democratic Caucus to make this happen. So if we get a round of applause for them. I want to announce the partners for this event, the Stonewall Democratic Caucus, and Latino Leadership Council. Did I miss any dignitaries? Or any candidates? I'm so sorry. David Lopez.
City Commissioner from the City of Las Vegas.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so very much. Our sister city. Okay, well, in that case, if there's no other dignitaries or if there's anybody I've missed, please forgive me. Maybe we'll announce you at the end. I'd like to turn this over, of course, to our moderator.
Thank you all for coming tonight and not going out to have a drink or two and instead listening to this important debate. And I want to read briefly the rules of the debate. First of all, we're going to have our debaters talk about themselves for about 2 minutes. We will cut them off for sure if they go on and on about themselves. Our timekeeper here is Margaret. That's another friend of mine, Vicenta Montoya, who will be keeping time. Thank you, Vicenta, for keeping our debaters in line. We will ask questions of the debaters and perhaps do some follow-up. They only have 90 seconds to respond to our questions. Then towards the end of the debate tonight, we will be taking Q&As from the audience, which Vicenta is taking a look at, and we will pose that to the questions. At the very end, again, the debaters will have an opportunity to give a 2-minute closing statement, and then we can all go home. So let me start with asking from Lucy to that end, and we'll start with a different debater as we go through the night, to give us your 2-minute opening statement. Ms. Flores, please.
Would you prefer, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
No? Yes, no, okay. It's kind of unusual to be sitting, while giving the...
I think if you push the mic, there we go.
Yeah, I know, but then you'd have to sit or yell really loudly into this. Okay, so we'll just share the mic if that's okay. All right. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here this evening. Of course, thank you to our hosts. Thank you to Councilman Barone. I'm not going to use up all of my time saying thank you, so I just really appreciate you taking some time to be here. My name is Lucy Flores. I am a former state legislator. I actually am the only person who represented this district before. I've been here since I was 2 years old, so I'm incredibly proud to be running for this seat and to be running for a community that I've been in my entire life. I've been here since I was 2 years old. If you recall, I ran for lieutenant governor last year. I spent a lot of time since I was elected back in 2010 talking a lot about my own personal story and the challenge that I experienced growing up here, right on Cheyenne and Civic Center. And I do that because it was to talk about not just my motivation of why I decided to run for office, but also where my priorities are as a leader, as an elected official. And so many of you know my background. You know that I experienced a lot of challenge. You know that my family is a family of immigrants. My mother left my family when I was 9, and I really started to experience a lot of obstacles because my dad was literally working day and night. He was a gardener by day and a musician at night. He was a músico, and he would go out and he wasn't there when we needed him because he was literally trying to keep us clothed and fed. And so because I didn't have a lot of support in our school system, things went from bad to worse. I ended up getting in a lot of trouble. I ended up actually on juvenile parole by the time I was 15 and ended up dropping out of high school at 17, just like almost every single one of my brothers and sisters except for one. And so I say that to say that my priorities are with the community. Someone made a difference in my life, and I'm here to make that difference for others. When I talk about the challenges, the struggles, I personally understand. And that is the reason why I'm running. It's the reason why I decided to run in 2010, and the reason why my priority and my energy will always be with this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Mr. Oseguera, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Latino Democratic Caucus and the Stonewall Democrats. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for everybody for coming out. My name is John Oseguera. I was born and raised in this state. My kids are 5th generation Nevadans. Spent my entire adult professional career here in North Las Vegas, so it's good to be standing here at home, if you will. I did a lot of time right across the street here at Carrie and Daly, and Cheyenne and Civic Center was a station that I worked at. There's no longer a station there. I think it's a Chinese restaurant, but and then Martin Luther King and Cheyenne was another station that I worked in this very area for the better part of 2 decades. So I started on the fire department here and went from firefighter to assistant chief, retired in 2011. Along the way, you know, the fire department's one of those jobs where you're out there where the rubber meets the road. Saw a lot of things going on in my community that I thought could be changed. So I ran for office and was elected to your legislature, was in your legislature for 12 years, served as the assistant majority leader for 4 years, and the speaker for the last 2 in 2011. So I'm running this time for the same reason that I ran then. I thought the person that was representing me wasn't doing a good job, and I thought I could do a better job. I think the same now. You're being represented by a guy named Crescent Hardy that doesn't represent your values, and I think that I represent your values better. And so I want to earn your support, and I did it under 2 minutes.
Senator Kuhn, please.
Thank you, and good evening, and muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches a todos. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the Latino Democratic Caucus, Vicenta Montoya, and the Stonewall Dems for organizing this, and also Sylvia, thank you so much for moderating. My name is Ruben Kiwen. I'm a state senator. I'm a former state assemblyman who actually represented this area before it was City Hall. This used to be a trailer park home here, and I used to come out here and knock on doors. And so I'm proud to see this building here. But most importantly, aside from being a former state assemblyman, and aside from being a state senator, I am the proud son of a housekeeper, a culinary union housekeeper, and a former farm worker. My father, who is here today, fought tirelessly, and he brought me and my family to the United States in pursuit of the American dream. We came here so we could someday own a home, have a car, have a good paying job, a union job, and so that someday we can have a good education. Today, my family has achieved that American dream. That story is a very unlikely story, but it's a story that is only possible in the United States of America. We have achieved that American dream, but unfortunately, right now we have a Congress that is controlled by the wealthy and the elite, by powerful people, the big corporations who don't understand the people of North Las Vegas. We have a congressman who is part of that problem. We have a congressman who's part of that wealthy and elite, who has rigged the system against people like you and I. While I was in Carson City fighting to increase the minimum wage, Congressman Hardy opposes raising the minimum wage. While I support equal pay for women, he opposes equal pay for women. And while I've made college more affordable, he has been cutting the Pell Grants. Tonight, I look forward to the discussion, and most importantly, I look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
And last but not least, Ms. Susie Lee.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thanks to the host for having us here and my opponents for being here tonight. My name is Susie Lee, and I'm running for Congress because I have spent my life working hard and getting results for what I believe in. And the Congress of today is leading this country in a direction where we're saying to our young people, look at where you are when you're born, because that's going to determine where you end up as an adult. That goes against the grain of everything I have worked for in my entire professional career. I was born one of 8 kids in a small town in Canton, Ohio. My father worked in a steel mill and my mother stayed at home. With 10 mouths to feed and 1 paycheck, we all pitched in. We didn't have savings to go to college, but we pieced it together through Pell Grants, Perkin loans, and help from other people. And it was because then that I was lifted up, that I have been fighting my whole career to lift others up. I moved to Las Vegas 23 years ago to be with my husband of 20 years, Dan. And since then, I opened the first comprehensive homeless drop-in center. I started the After School All-Stars, and 20 years later, every day 5,000 kids have a safe place to learn after school. But I'm most proud of my work as board president of Communities and Schools, a dropout prevention program serving 56,000 students, 11 SUM schools. 44% of our students are Latino, and 44% of our workforce is Latino. Because of our work, thousands of kids have a chance at a better life through graduation. It is that grit, hard work, and getting results that I have done, and I will take that to Washington and fight to keep the road to middle class open and the road to prosperity wider for all of us. I ask for your support, and thank you.
Thank you all. Let me start with you, John, to talk about some of our debate questions which our group has put together. And we want to start talking about the federal minimum wage. It's $7.25 per hour, which translates to just about $15,000 for a full-time worker. And it's been that way for decades. About 70% of the public supports an increase in the minimum wage. Would you announce here and now that supporting the federal minimum wage is part of your campaign, not only for the Democratic caucus, but for the General Caucus? And if it is not your position now that that's what you will support, tell us why.
Sure, thank you very much. So the last time the minimum wage was actually raised was not decades ago, but not to correct the moderator because she might be mean to me, but we actually passed a bill to put the minimum wage on the ballot while I was in the legislature. I supported that bill. I would support raising the minimum wage now. $15,000 a year is, I don't know who could live on that, let alone a family. So I absolutely would be in support of raising the minimum wage.
Would you make that part of your campaign?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for the question. In my opening statement, I talked about how I've been fighting to raise the minimum wage. But there's going to be many candidates who are going to talk about raising the minimum wage because it's been given to them as part of the talking points. I've actually been fighting to raise the minimum wage. This past legislative session, I was the senator who presented the bill in committee to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Unfortunately, the Republicans killed the bill. Republicans, just like Crescent Hardy, who have been tirelessly fighting to increase the minimum wage. And the reason why is because Crescent Hardy, our current congressman, is a multimillionaire who has multiple companies. And guess what? The less he pays his employees, the more money he's going to be keeping in his pocket. So it is unacceptable. We need to make sure that we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and make sure that people have a livable wage.
Thank you. I entered this race because having done work with at-risk, low-income students in our school district, serving 56,000 students this year alone, I've understood the impact of family breakdown because not being able to have a wage that supports a family. So most definitely this will be a pillar of my campaign. It is part of the reason I've run for Congress. Crescent Hardy, not only does he not think we should increase the minimum wage, he doesn't think there is a minimum wage. But increasing the minimum wage is only one aspect of my economic plan. We need to fight and produce and encourage job development and economic diversification in this community. And most importantly, we need to invest in education, open access to early childhood education, and affordable higher education so we can train a workforce to take those high-skilled, high-paying jobs that we're going to bring to this community as part of my work. Thanks.
Lucy, would you round out?
Thank you very much. Yes, I absolutely support an increase in the minimum wage, and I'll go also as far as saying that the minimum that I support is $15 an hour. I think that we live in an absolutely different kind of economy nowadays. You have more and more families who are working several jobs just to make it, and frankly, it's just not acceptable. If you work 40 hours a week, you shouldn't be living in poverty, period. And so I absolutely will fight to increase the minimum wage. I fully stand by $15 an hour. And in addition to that, I also believe that we do require a fundamental shift in our economy where we're now seeing the majority of the economic benefits in our economy going to the top 1% and the top 0.5%. That's also unacceptable. And so fighting for a change in the way that income is taxed, for example, is absolutely crucial, as well as fighting for an increase in the minimum wage.
Thank you. I'm going to start this question now with Ruben. And we all have seen these unfortunate videos of police arrests, and we all agree that Black Lives Matter. The question to you, Ruben, to start off, is what is your opinion about how Las Vegas Metro handles officer shootings? Do you think this is a good model for national reform, or what would you do different to stop those unfortunate videos that we keep seeing over and over again?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, I want to commend the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement for helping to elevate the discussion about racial tensions in America. I myself, being Mexican born and raised here in North Las Vegas, I've seen firsthand the discrimination against minorities, against Hispanics, African Americans, anybody who has dark skin. So for me, this is something that is personal because I've lived it. Not because I read about it in a newspaper, or not because I have talking points, but because I have lived this. And so for me, I applaud Metro for having a citizens review board that is tasked to review every case that's questionable. That is exactly why in this past legislative session, I supported funding and we approved body cameras for police officers, because I think this is good for both the police officer as well as the victim. If the police officer really didn't do anything, they'll be vindicated through the video. If somebody did commit a crime against a fellow citizen, then the video will tell that, and the police officer will have to pay the consequences. And just like I supported that in the state legislature, I will support at the federal level having body cameras for police officers.
Ruben, do you think body cameras are enough, or do we need more?
Absolutely, we need more. I think we need to be working, minority communities have to be working with the local police departments. I think Metro has set a really good example in working with their communities. They're always out there reaching out. And I think this is a good model to continue reaching out to other jurisdictions across the country.
Thank you. Several years ago, we had several incidents in this community that were really high profile, and I must commend our police force for taking these steps to address that. That being the review board, and I do think that our police department has taken strong steps to address this problem. That being said, we need to continue to fight for Black Lives Matter, and we need to continue to fight to make sure that our young people, we're closing the school to prison pipeline. I have participated definitely in the school district as part of the superintendent's Educational Opportunities Advisory Board. That takes 2 minutes just to say that title. Working with community leaders here to start to address the school to prison pipeline in the schools by training our educators and training people on the racial divide and the racial discrimination that is inherent in some of the decisions that are made. And I think that the police department can continue along those lines and continue that cultural competency training as we have recommended in the school district. And I think that there's more can be done. I support body cams, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lee. I wonder, Lucy, if you can talk a little bit about implicit bias, racial profiling, and how you think the police can really address that piece of it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, clearly this is a problem. It's been a problem. We know it's a problem. Fortunately, in at least the Las Vegas area, it hasn't been as big of a problem as we've seen in other cities. That doesn't mean that there's not things that we still have to address. Racial profiling is still occurring. One of the biggest things that we can do, and one of the things that we've done in the past, is try to get our law enforcement agencies to actually take statistics on who they're pulling over and what racial background that person is from, so that we can start to see whether or not there's trends that are occurring out there, which I absolutely support. I believe, of course, that we should have body cams, but I also believe that we've had some problems with our Citizens Review Board here, and some people in the crowd have been a part of that. There needs to be a higher level of accountability. In California, for example, you've now seen that there's an independent third-party investigation that's done by another agency. I think it's really important to make sure that if we're reviewing these things, that it's not being reviewed by the very same people, for example, who might be supervisors, who might be the bosses of these our law enforcement officers. So I do believe that we need additional accountability in the process as well.
John, you know a little bit about the mentality of law enforcement officers and people who serve in that capacity. So my question to you is, can we really change their hearts and their minds? What can we do to stop the bad apples that really poison the whole atmosphere and stop racial profiling? We want our young men to walk free and proud and not be afraid of police.
Thank you for the question. So I think that, like Ruben said, that the Black Lives Matter movement has really elevated the discussion. And just to go back to the question for 1 second, we've done a lot in our review process, but it's taken a number of years, probably longer than most of us have wanted. But I think we're getting there. An example of what we can do is being done right here in this community, right off of Martin Luther King at the Metro substation. It's called community policing. It's putting your officers in the street and talking to the community. Now, I don't know that that's still going on. I think it's slowed down a little bit, but in the past, these officers in that area, which is an area that some would say you wouldn't maybe want to go work in, but when they instituted community policing, when they were showing our young children the front seat of the police car instead of the back seat, that area was the most sought after area for officers to go to and work. So good officers, great officers who wanted to be part of the community were going there because they knew there was that kind of leadership, that kind of mentoring, that kind of taking care of the community. So I think that that type of role would make a huge difference in our police department. I think partly it is happening.
Thank you, John. Start with you, Susie, and the federal government has just passed a big education bill, ESSA, and it's another long bill, 1,000 pages long. I myself have not read it, so I confess that I'm not totally versed in it. But what is it about ESA that is positive, and what more would you work for if you were in Congress to make sure that we stop being number 50 here in Nevada? We're tired of being number 50 in education, and we know our kids deserve better.
Thank you. I actually lobbied Congress as part of my work with communities and schools. Part of the thing that I think is most beneficial of the ESSA was really recognizing closing the achievement gap for our students who are minority and living in poverty. And as part of that, programs like communities and schools have become an allowable expense. And those support of wraparound services, I'm proud to say that it's finally been recognized on a federal level as being a key component of opening the pathway to success for students. I also like with the ESSA that the control has become more local. I was a supporter of the empowerment program where decisions are best made by those who are closest to the action, and there's less competition among states for funding. With respect to what can be done and what can be done in Nevada, first and foremost, I think always we need to recognize parental involvement needs to be improved, but most importantly, funding. It's not a surprise that we rank at the bottom of educational achievement, but we also rank at the bottom of what we spend on education. And I think we need to continue, and I certainly will use the role of Congresswoman as a bully pulpit to fight for increased education spending in this state.
Lucy, I know you're a great supporter of education. What more can you add to that?
Well, actually, I think another really incredible component of this change was the de-emphasis on high-stakes testing. One of the things that I did in the legislature, because we were constantly fighting with Republicans, including the representative who represents this district now, Crescent Hardy, about trying to get more funding for our kids, was saying, what else can we do? So I actually revamped the way that we exit our kids out of high school. I did away with the proficiency exam and went to a lower stakes end of course model. And that's actually one of the things that they've done now in the reauthorization of this, is they've said, let's look at testing and move away from those high-stake tests. Let's look at the way that we also evaluate our teachers and not make the analysis of those teachers based on just test scores. Because we know that that doesn't tell the entire picture of our kids. And we know that we're wasting far too much time on these kids and testing and testing and testing. So I think that was a very, very good improvement, and I'm glad that it's actually something that I had the opportunity to work on and change as well here in the entire school system in Nevada.
Thank you. Well, I think it just leads, it's common sense that educational attainment leads to higher earning potential. As a matter of fact, if you have a high school education today, your earning potential over your course of your career is about 1.2 million. If you have a bachelor's degree, it's about 2.2 million. So it lends itself that if you don't have a high school education, it's less than that. Things that we can do is give kids a start on that. So things like the Head Start program, which is directly related to the question you asked. We need to help kids get a good early start. How about having food in school where they actually have nutrition? Pre-K and K, things that we've been fighting, all of us up here, I'll give everybody credit for those kind of things for a long time. And that'll give kids a head start and a fighting chance to go ahead and achieve later on in life.
Thank you. You know, I'm a product of the local public education system. I went to J.D. Smith Middle School, went to Rancho High School. I see some Rancho students, by the way, go Rancho. And I went to CSN as well as UNLV. So if there's anybody that understands firsthand the challenges of the school district, it's myself, because I've lived them. And that is exactly why I ran for office. Education has always been my top priority. That is why this past legislative session, I was proud to have voted for the largest investment in education in Nevada history. I see Senator Spearman here. We fought tirelessly to raise the funds. We went back and forth with Republicans who didn't want to cooperate, but we know that if we have a well-trained and well-educated workforce, we're going to have a diversified economy. People are going to have good jobs. Businesses are going to be created, and then lastly, that's exactly why I fought for the Silver State Opportunity Grants, the first ever need-based grants for low-income students to go to college. Like some of the students who are here tonight, now they're going to have a shot to go to college, be able to be productive members of society. That is why we run for office. That is why I ran for office.
We're going to turn to immigration next, and almost every poll shows that for the Latino community, immigration is important, not because we are illegal immigrants, but because it hits our community closely. We are a population that has a high proportion of immigrants and foreign-born in our families and people that we're close to. So a couple questions to each of you, and let's start this time with Ms. Flores. First of all, Marco Rubio has been very critical of the idea of comprehensive immigration reform. Do you think that comprehensive reform is still possible, or do we need to do it piece by piece? And if we have to cut up the baby, what pieces of it would you do first? And second of all, DACA is a program that was by executive order. Let's assume that the Supreme Court approves the DACA plan. Would you keep DACA, and how would you keep it?
Thank you for the question. It's very, very important to the immigrant community here in Nevada. We actually have one of the largest proportions of immigrant population here in Nevada, so it affects a lot of families. It's very important for me as well and very personal because, of course, my family are immigrants from Mexico. And as far as comprehensive immigration reform, I absolutely think that we can still get it done. The only reason why we don't have comprehensive immigration reform right now is because you literally have just a couple of people in the House who have refused to hear that bipartisan legislation that was passed by the Senate. It's been sitting in the House for about 2 years now. And because the speaker, the former speaker, and the current speaker won't call it for a vote, we haven't had it. We know we have the votes. We have Republican votes and we have Democratic votes. And that piece of legislation includes a pathway to citizenship, which is